Welcome back, everyone. It has been a while since I've done one of these videos, so I might be a little rusty, but hopefully you had a good week last week, not having to watch a billion of these. But we do have new stuff to learn. I don't want to give up on learning just because if you're not coming back to school. I know it's easy to just be like, oh, school's done. So like, I could just give you a bunch of review, but I really think that we should be trying to learn new concepts. And I think you can do it. Like, you guys are pretty smart. So we are talking about graphing using standard form. We're used to slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. I hope you're used to that because I've been trying to get you to understand what that means. M is the slope, rise over run, and b is the y-intercept where it crosses the y-axis. So when we see something in this form, remember we can just graph the b and then count the slope from there, and that's how it's easy to graph that way. But standard form is also a thing. I don't love it because I just really like slope-intercept, but it's a thing, so it's actually pretty easy to use standard form in order to graph. You just have to know what to do. So here's an example. Let's say they give you 2x plus 3y equals 12. In order to find 2 points, what you can do is one time pretend x is 0 and one time pretend y is 0. Okay, so if you plug in 0 for x, you can find the y-intercept, right? That's where it crosses the y-axis. And then if you plug in 0 for y, you find the x-intercept. That's where it crosses the x-axis. So I did exactly that. I plugged in 0 for x. 2 times 0, obviously that becomes 0. And you end up with just 3y equals 12. And then you can solve for y, and I put it right over here. And then I acted like y was 0. So I plugged in 0 for y, and I solved for x and got 6. So this is the way that we find the 2 points. Once you find those 2 points, the line is very easy to graph. Just graph those 2 points and connect them. And then, of course, you can find the slope if you want. You don't really need to because it's not in slope-intercept form. But the whole point is to be able to say, I know what I can do. I can just plug in 0 for x, plug in 0 for y, and then solve for the other ones and graph them. So that is the first little, I hope you can see this, the first little example, which brings us to our real example, which is example 1. So I'm gonna leave the standard form up here. We're not doing slope-intercept. I just wanted to show you that's what we're used to, and this is just written differently. You can take standard form and make it slope-intercept by solving for y. I don't want to go into that because I don't want to confuse anybody. I had like a whole example here because that's what I like to do, but I'd rather you just focus on what you need to know how to do. You can all solve for y by using algebra. But here we go, example 1. It says find the x and y intercepts of 3x plus 4y equals 24. And you guys know, I just said the x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis, so y is 0. And the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, so x is 0. So I make a little chart, and I put my zeros. If x is 0, I don't even need to plug this because anything times 0 is going to be 0. So I'm just going to say 4y equals 24. And then we find out that y is 6. Very easy. And then, now if y is 0, we're just left with 3x equals 24. And that was ugly. If you divide by 3, I'm going to cross those out just in case anybody's wondering. X would be 8. And when you graph those, you end up with the line. And I can do that. I don't want to waste time, but also. So x is 0. Remember, x always comes first. So if it's 0, you don't go anywhere left to right. Go up 6. I feel like every time I graph something, like on the spot, I mess it up. And then if y is 0, you don't go anywhere up or down. Just go over 8. And then here comes the big reveal. Can I connect to this line without it being gross and crooked and weird? Probably not. No. The answer is no. I tried to be confident and go fast. You know, like if you go fast, sometimes you can just do it real quick. Not me, but you see the point. You can connect the lines. And then I do want to show you just for fun how you can solve for y to put it back in that y equals mx plus b. So the first thing, we'd get rid of the x by subtracting from both sides, because this is added. You're not actually dividing by 3. You're taking the whole term. Remember terms? And since this is a term, it's technically added, so we could subtract it from both sides. Okay? And I'm going to write it with the x first because mx plus b. And then when you divide by 4, you divide by 4 everywhere, not just on the 1. So you're left with y equals negative 3/4 x plus 6. And then where's that little plus 6 is the b, right? And then 3/4 is the slope, negative 3/4. So this is the same exact thing. You can put it in slope-intercept form if you need to, but you can also graph it in standard form and get the same answer. The same line, the same graph. Let's move on. Example 2. And this will be the last example. You just needed to be familiar with what standard form is and how to solve for your x and y intercepts. Okay, I wrote it in a little bit abbreviated format. They said there's 2 numbers. The sum is 3. So you should honestly be able to write these equations. The sum of 2 numbers is 3. So we don't know the numbers. X plus y equals 3. Right? Doesn't that make sense? Now, 1 plus 2 seems obvious, but there are negative numbers now. So like it could be negative 8 plus, good thing, negative 8 plus 11 or whatever, you know, like it doesn't have to be just positive numbers. So you can't jump to that conclusion. And then if you double the first, what's doubling x? Multiplying by 2. And then add the second. The sum is 8. So we have 2 different numbers, or 2 different equations here, okay? So in order to find what the actual 2 numbers are, we're going to graph these and see where they intercept, where they cross. That's where the point is, and that's what the 2 numbers equal. We can also solve this by algebra, but we're doing graphing right now. So this is standard form. 1x plus 1y. You guys, if there's no coefficient, the coefficient is 1. I've been trying to like get that in your heads. If you haven't noticed, like every quiz and every test, I put something on there with what's the coefficient? And there is a coefficient. It's 1. It's not 0, or else nothing would be there. If I have 0y, I don't have anything. So I wouldn't even put anything, right? But if I have a y, that's 1y. We assume it's 1 because it's just 1. Anything by itself is 1. Okay, moving on. We can use our whole x and y thing. If we pretend x is 0 and if we pretend y is 0. So if x is 0 here, y is 3, right? And if y is 0, then the x is 3. So that one was pretty simple. And then here's our second one. If x is 0 here, well, y is 8 because this just becomes nothing. So if x is 0, y is 8. And then if y is 0, x would be 4. So if you're looking at this and you're like, okay, Miss Walker, like I don't know how you ended up with y equals 3 and x equals 3 so fast. Plug in 0 for x and do the algebra on paper and you'll see what I mean. You'll see exactly what happened because this kind of disappears when you put a 0 there, right? Because you're multiplying by 0. So maybe, you know, that's a little bit of a leap for you. I don't know. Hopefully not. Hopefully that was easy to follow. Okay, moving on. So if we graph these, we have 0, 3, and 3, 0, right? Because you go up, and then there's, and it's not going to be, wow, look at that line. I don't want to brag or anything, but I'm probably an artist. And then 0, 8, where y is 8. Please don't graph these backwards. And then 4, 0. Okay, so we're going to see where they cross. They end up crossing. It's supposed to be like 5, negative 2, I think. Hold on. Yeah, it's supposed to be 5, -2. Mine were a little crooked, but they should have crossed right here. Or right here. Whatever. Please, when you're graphing, you'll have like perfect and use the straight edge and stuff. And they'll end up crossing at 5 and -2. So you know that's what the two numbers were. And then if you add 5 plus -2, you end up with 3. So that's how it works. And there's a practice set I put in the Google Forms. I'm going to go because somebody's making a loud noise and I don't want this video to be obstructed. Have a great day.